Oh, great flag in the ground, what do you do? Well, I can let you level up, set your magic, divine beasts, all of that stuff. But how do you work? I am a flag. Right, but could you please explain what virtues and paths are? I am a flag. So what you're saying is you don't know either? Well, no, I don't. Ladies, gentlemen, and warriors of all ages, you finally got your hands on Wolong Fallen Dynasty for yourselves. How's your experience so far? I hope you've been enjoying the game. The combat is extremely fun and fluid, and there is a lot to it to let you really have a completely personalized experience, different from pretty much any other player. That said, in the time leading up to release, through multiple demos and various social media perusing I've been doing, I can't help but notice everyone is a little bit confused about both the leveling up system and the Wizardry system as well. So today I thought it would be prudent to dive into that and explain it all in proper detail with the knowledge that I've gained from the few days of playing I have under my belt so far. At first, this system as a whole can be incredibly daunting. It throws a lot at you without explaining much of it easily, so let's break it down. In order to level up, you need chi. You get chi by defeating enemies, and you lose some chi when you die, though you can also get that chi back by murdering the enemy that killed you. When you have enough chi, you can put 1 point into any of the 5 virtues. The chi cost of leveling up, of course, goes up every time as it expects you to progress through the game to more valuable enemies as you go forward. That said, of course, like in other games of this type, there are pretty efficient ways of gaining chi early on that let you totally outlevel the things in front of you if you want to, and make your experience much easier. As such, I'll have a video coming quite soon about an early chi farm that can be extremely lucrative. Moving on then, leveling up does a couple of things, no matter how you do it. No matter which virtue you level up, you will gain maximum health. This is obviously a big deal, as more health means you can take more hits before you die, and it just makes the game more comfortable as a whole to play. Every few levels that you gain, you'll also gain Wizardry points. When this happens, it gives you 1 for each Wizardry path. This means you can unlock 1 Wizardry of each path each time that this happens, so by the end of the game, you might well have unlocked every spell available to you. That said, not only can you only have 4 spells equipped at any given time, but you can also only use spells if you meet their requirements, so unlocking them isn't the only thing you need to do. Every spell in the game has 2 requirements within itself to be able to be used. The first one is the requirement for your level in its respective virtue. To use higher level fire spells, you need to be a high fire level yourself, and so on and so forth. Many of the spells also secondarily have a morale requirement. Morale is the number above your health bar that goes up as you defeat enemies within a level, so even once you've unlocked a spell and also have the required points in its virtue, you may not even be able to use it until quite late within a specific level. This is a method of balancing they've used within the game, as if you could just walk in and call down a lightning storm 5 seconds into a level, it would probably be a little bit broken, and rather than balancing later levels in the game to expect you to instantly have those, they've instead made it so you simply have to build up morale before you can access them, which I actually quite like. It builds this feeling of growing power in every single individual locale of the game. Back to the virtues themselves, so let's talk about what each one actually does for you on an individual level when you boost them up. The wood virtue is the biggest one. Personally, I think this one is ideal for anyone who wants the game to feel a little bit easier, and there are a couple of reasons for that. Firstly, when you put a level into the wood virtue, it boosts your maximum health by 7. A level in any other virtue will also boost your maximum health, as I mentioned before, but levels for non-wood virtues will only raise your maximum health by 3. In other words, a level spent on wood gives you more than double the max HP boost of a level in any other virtue. Past that, a level in wood virtue will also raise your spirit defense. Spirit defense defines how much of your spirit gauge you will lose when you are hit by an attack, so high wood means you get lots of health, and also you have less negatives for actually being hit by your enemies. On top of that, wood levels increase spell duration, which increases the duration of buffs you place on yourself, and also debuffs you put on your enemy. Past this, a level in wood will also increase your damage with wood type effects on your weapon, which includes things like lightning, as well as increasing your earth resistance. As in the 5-path system, wood overcomes earth. This is literally represented by wood spells countering out earth spells, but it also means that leveling up wood gives you more earth resistance, which is a neat way of working that in. Past this, no matter what virtue you choose to level, there are weapons that scale with it. Every melee weapon in the game scales with 3 different virtues, and the result is that between them, no matter which virtues you favor, there will be a weapon to match your stats and boost your damage with them as a result. Even if you go wood, which has the main value of essentially being the HP stat, there are weapons that will get higher damage, which is a really neat function.
I like trees.
That said, every stat is a damage stat in its own right, and so just level up the ones that you actually like and you'll find a weapon that matches it. Before moving on to the next virtue then, let's look at the wood path spells. As I mentioned before, virtues and spells are intrinsically connected, so your choice of what to level up will affect both of these things. For the most part, wood magic consists of lightning or thorns, but also has a few buffs. An important early one is Absorb Vitality. When active, this lets you gain health when attacking an enemy. The amount that you gain isn't massive, but it can really add up over time anyways. There is a spell that increases your Divine Beast gauge accumulation. This is fantastic too, as the Divine Beast mechanic is extremely strong, so if you have it more often, it'll just make your harder fights much easier. Wood gets access to Lightning Weapon, which gives your melee weapon lightning damage, and the big spells at the end of the tree for wood are one that summons a bunch of thorns that give you health based on the damage that they've done, a massive lightning storm, and a neat buff that just makes you completely ignore an enemy attack once per cast. No flinch, no damage, just ignore it. Then we move on to the fire virtue. This has two main unique effects. When you level up fire, it increases the spirit that you gain when your attacks hit an enemy. Spirit defines a lot of the gameplay in Wo Long, your ability to use martial arts, wizardry, and also do spirit attacks, which makes it easier to get fatal blows on enemies. On top of this, it also lowers the cost of using martial arts, which are the sort of skills tied to each weapon that cost spirit and generally do quite a lot of damage. This is sort of the attack stat. Everything under fire will let you gain more resources, and these resources are where the real damage comes from. That said, again, weapons scale with all virtues, so it isn't a literal attack stat so much as it just gives you more potential to deal damage when you're successful. A level in fire will also raise your damage with fire-based attacks, as well as increasing your resistance to metal-type damage, which includes things like poison. As for fire path wizardry, this is mostly what you'd expect. A lot of big fiery effects that deal high damage, especially to things that are weak to fire. There are also some buffs in this tree though, things like amplify damage, which both increases your damage that you deal and receive, a double-edged sword that rewards you for playing well. This is also the tree that gives you flame weapon, which puts flame element on your melee weapon, and the higher tier spells are mostly just various types of massive fiery explosions, with one exception in Overpower Burst, which is a massive damage buff to the next wizardry or martial art that you use after casting. Past that, we move on to Earth Virtue. This stat sort of counts as your defense, but again, stats aren't quite that simple in this game. If you increase your Earth level, you will gain maximum equip weight, which lets you equip heavier armor without decreasing your speed, thus increasing your damage resistance naturally. On top of that, it also increases the spirit that you gain when you successfully deflect an attack. Deflecting is a major defensive mechanic in this game, and as I mentioned before, spirit is quite important for actually being able to do things. As a result, the effect of this stat is quite good, and you just gain more spirit for doing the things you already want to be doing, generally benefiting a more defensive playstyle though. As well, when you level the Earth Virtue, you gain damage with earth-based attacks, and you gain resistance to water damage. As far as earth magic goes, this is heavily focused around area of effect attacks and self buffs. You can make rocks come up from the underground, you can make a vortex of sand that pulls enemies towards you, you can put a sort of mud trap on the ground too that both decreases movement speed within it and also does damage to anything that touches it, but you can also do buffs like enhanced defense, which makes you take less damage from incoming attacks and also become mostly unflinchable. This tree is where you get the stone weapon buff to put stone damage on your melee weapon, and as far as the higher level spells, this one is pretty neat too, having things like a shield that just absorbs a set amount of damage, a roar that essentially taunts nearby enemies, forcing them to attack you over any allies, a massive charge attack, and a forward jab that does more damage the lower that your health is. Then we have the Metal Virtue.
A metal earth with metal men and metal thoughts.
When leveled up, this increases your spirit sustainability. When your spirit bar goes up, if you don't continue to gain spirit for a short time, it will start to decrease naturally. The higher this stat is, the longer you have before it starts to decrease. It also decreases the cost of wizardry spells, so if you want to be casting loads of spells, then metal is a really important stat to invest in. As well, leveling metal will increase your metal type damage and also your resistance to wood type attacks. As far as the metal path spells go, this is actually one of my favorites personally. It has a bunch of poison type things, including poison weapon to let you apply poison damage with your melee weapon, and the ability to create poison bogs to deal damage over time to enemies that are standing in them. But that is a less important part, at least to me personally, because metal also has spells that let you debuff your enemies in significant ways. Things like decreasing the damage that they can deal, lowering their spirit recovery rate which lets you get more fatal blows, increasing the damage that they take from all sources, and a spell that increases ailment gain on enemies. The big spells for metal are Molten Calamity Thorn, which clears debuffs on enemies enemies, but also does more damage for any debuff cleared. Thorn Shot, which just creates a damaging patch on the ground, and Venom Snare, which creates a poison cloud that follows an enemy around and causes enemies that are near them to take damage over time. Then finally we have the Water Virtue. This specifically affects your ranged weapon damage, as ranged weapons only scale with water. There are still melee weapons that do scale with water, so don't worry about that. It also increases your stealth stat when you level it up, which makes it harder for enemies to detect you and lets you get easier and more plentiful fatal blows, which in return also boosts your morale rank faster within a level. Past that, it also decreases the spirit loss for a failed deflect, and of course it increases your damage with water type damage, and it also gives you more resistance to fire type damage. For water wizardry specifically, it gets a bit interesting. This is where the ice magic is found, lots of icicle type attacks and the ability to give yourself ice damage on your melee weapon. This tree also has more interesting spells like Obscuring Frost, which creates an area of effect around you that makes it harder for enemies to target you. This is probably much better in PvP than anywhere else. There is a spell that increases your movement speed, and then the big water spells are mostly essentially just different types of massive icicles except for one, which is Aqua Blink. This is a literal teleport. Yes, a teleport, and that is awesome. As far as general tips for your leveling path, wood is never a bad call. You'll see my stats in the video are a bit just sort of all over the place, but that is just my testing build to see what stuff does. By the end of the game, you'll probably have a high level in 3 out of the 5 virtues, so generally pick the one that you really like the look of to be your main, but then consider what secondary or tertiary things you may want as well. Especially if you look at melee weapons, they scale with 3 different stats, so if you can find one that scales with the 3 virtues that you like anyways, then you're absolutely golden. That's it for today, everyone. I hope this little chat has helped you out in your understanding of the virtue and paths system in Wolong Fallen Dynasty, and I hope it helps you to get even more enjoyment out of the game. Let us know if there's any other systems or just anything else in general you want help understanding within this game, and we'll hopefully get to it sooner rather than later. But for now, I wish you all the best of luck playing through the game itself. Like if you like the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.